In today's economy, more people than ever are looking to buy and sell businesses. But how do you do it? Welcome to the Deal Board, presented by Transworld Business Advisors. Straight talk about real deals and real people. Listen to stories, interviews, and expert advice to help your business sale, merger, or acquisition process. Now, here are your business exit experts, Andy and Jessica.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And we have a very, very special, I know I say that all the time, but this is one that's near and dear to my heart. We have Dr. Joe Oravecz from NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. They are changing their name. They don't love that name, but they have chapters across the world. I got to meet Dr. Joe, and he is specializing and working with executive mental health.
Mm-hmm. And this is a really important episode. So it's something different than we typically talk about. But, a lot of you listening to this podcast are business owners or want to be business owners. And that takes a lot of mental toughness, right? And there's a lot of things that we have to be prepared for. And, one of my favorite quotes is that a business can only succeed as far as the leader can, right? And we have to take care of ourselves personally, not just physically, but mentally as well.
Yeah, and I've had struggles with my mental illness over the years, and I talk about it a lot. And I think it's a great, I was a young man at the time going through some rough times, and I think everybody has, right? And I think it's good to recognize that. And it's hard, especially hard for CEOs, for business owners to have a breakdown because they can't go out and tell their employees that they're losing it, and it could be situational, it could be episodical, it could be that you actually have a physical illness and something's going wrong. But Dr. Joe, such a cool and reassuring voice that I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. Yeah.
And one of the reasons that we wanted to bring this topic to the podcast, for those of you looking to sell your business, there is something that we don't talk about a lot, but there is, some depression and some anxiety issues that can occur after you sell your business, especially if you've been in a business for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I've even talked about same thing. I struggled after I sold my first business. I was only in it for 4 years, right? But reconciling, you're now letting go, really part of your identity.
It is very, very difficult. I've talked several entrepreneurs through that process, and once they let go, they're done, right? Mm-hmm. We've seen that before too. It's like, no, you have to keep running your business until we're done with this process. Yeah. But it is something that they should decide to do something afterwards to address their mental health or get counseling or get coaching. I mean, there's plenty of life coaches out there. There's plenty of places to go to get mentally fit, to retreats or to get involved with other things. And I think Exit Factor can help you in planning that as well. So there's lots of services out there. Transworld obviously is here to help you sell your business, but we think this is a really important subject to cover.
Yeah. And this is a great interview. So even though it's more not typical of like our business focused stuff, I think this is just as equally as important, if not more so. But outside of the episode, we also have
a listing of the week.
Yep. And a deal of the week, as always. So hopefully this brings some insight and helps a little bit on your personal life as well. But let's jump in.
Let's jump in.
Transworld Business Advisors is the world's largest business brokerage and mergers and acquisitions firm with over 1,000 brokers and nearly 250 offices worldwide. Transworld's team handles thousands of business sales every year. To be connected with a qualified business broker or learn more about the buying and selling process, visit tworld.com/thedealboard or call 888-719-9098.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And it is a very special episode of the Deal Board podcast. We are always bringing you things about business, and we have a big one today. I have a very special guest, Dr. Joe Oravecz. And he is with NAMI. He can explain what NAMI is, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And it's a large organization, but he's here in Broward and he's the CEO. And we got to meet recently, Dr. Joe, and he gets involved in nonprofit and he oversees nonprofit and just we shared our own mental health journeys in our own lives. And we said, we need to do an episode about this on our podcast to talk to executives, to talk to entrepreneurs, to talk to people about mental health, because we don't talk enough about it. So welcome. And why don't you give us a little introduction about who you are and what you do?
All right. Well, thank you. And Andy, what a tremendous opportunity, and to really for a leader in the community, a leader in your in business, to be able to embrace the conversation, because it really takes leadership from the top to walk the talk about mental health. Because if you don't do it at the top, then your employees and your entire team will not feel safe and even talking about it. And we need to do more and more and more and more. And so thank you again for the opportunity. So Dr. Joe Oravecz, National Alliance of Mental Illness. And what that is really, it is the oldest grassroots national organization in the country about mental health. Formulated 50 years ago with a group of moms around the kitchen table, really when at that time they were trying to figure out, how do we help support our children that have severe mental illness? Think about where that was, and even that topic was 50 years ago, under the carpet, under the table, no one wants to talk about it. And you have this segment that still they want to be able to support that. That has absolutely grown more and more and more. And so over 250 affiliates across the country. Every state across the country has a NAMI affiliate. So we have the state of Florida, NAMI, and then there's affiliates or chapters, or I'll say just chapters if you want to liken it to that, throughout Florida. And we are divided by counties. And so I am the CEO of NAMI Broward County. We have friends in Miami-Dade, friends in Palm Beach, friends in Orlando and Pinellas and over in Naples. But we're one of the, as far as populations, when you look at serving, is that Broward County is very, very, very large. And we have a small team, a very tiny team. However, what we do is that we provide at no cost support programs for individuals on their own mental health journey that need additional help and support. And what a signature program for NAMI is the family to family. And that is where those of us, and myself as a single foster adoptive parent, to be able to, that's where I started in NAMI years and years ago in another state of, I need support. I don't even know how to navigate this stuff. And so so that is what we offer, again, at no charge. And then we also are able to go into the school district to be able to talk ending the silence and mental health. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as far as other additional programs, and where I think where our common goal is here today is what I also found in my own mental health journey. So prior to this past January as CEO, worked on colleges and universities for the last 30 years as a dean of students, a vice president of student affairs and enrollment management. So everything, God help, and I get it with families that are helping navigating that, applying to college, and you've got kids in college as well. So how do you navigate all of that? I was the guy that, as far as my divisions and such, led families through admissions and financial aid, athletics, and student counseling services. So this is something that has been a part of my being for decades. And what I realized is, because of my experience with mental health, that I stepped back from university because people are saying you can do so much more about mental health if you start connecting. You connect the dots with chambers of commerce, you connect the dots with community centers, you connect the dots with religious organizations and such, beyond the behavioral health. And with my own mental health journey, what I realized at the C-suite level is that especially during COVID, that I was being looked at the university cabinet level as far as what are we doing for our students and how are we helping them for mental health. And I said, I got that covered. I got an incredible team. And then I started saying, so what are we doing for our employees? What are we doing for the executive team? Because it is incredibly hard to lead, especially during a pandemic, of all the mental health. And we have to have this facade that everything is fine. I got it under control. And then who do we talk to? Yeah, if you're fortunate enough to have a loved one, a family member that kind of gets it but doesn't get it, they'll just listen to you. But then others, I started realizing, how do we even work on our own executive mental health to be able to embrace that, to talk to someone, and then also walking the talk with our employees. That if we don't create a safe environment for our employees, what do we want? We want to recruit great talent. We want to retain great talent. And in part of that is how are we supporting them in that work environment? In the work environment, and as well as far as when they're not in the work environment, because it transcends all different segments and different environments. So my hope and part of what we're also doing with NAMI and what I'm doing personally is having conversations with CEOs to be able to say, how might we have that conversation at the C-suite level about what is ending the stigma in the workplace even look like for you all? And we can go real slow or we can go real deep, real fast. It all just depends on what we're doing and what you are doing, Andy, as far as really sharing that authentic story and embracing that. That's incredible role modeling. And others and other companies and such need to see that, because with the passion and understanding of the importance of mental health. So it's the mental health, well-being. We can't just allow just the chief human resource officer for that to sit on their shoulders saying, you handle the mental health. It's really, how do we embrace it? What does that look like? So that's in part as far as a new initiative that I've just recognized it's starting to get a lot of really, really good traction. And so that's what my hope is, in the coming months to be able to do that.
Well, I think you're hitting on several great things. Number one, I always say this, it's very lonely being an entrepreneur and being the head of a company. A lot of times, even if you do have a loved one, it's hard to go home and dump that on them because they don't understand. And it's a big burden. I mean, as an entrepreneur, I say to my wife sometimes, I'm like, I chose this. You didn't choose this. I mean, I know you're on the journey with me, but you didn't choose to be an entrepreneur. You didn't choose to be CEO of a big company. I did. And it's something that morphed itself into something that's very large. And I, first of all, yes, my own mental health journey. I look back on the counseling that I got when I was a young man, that it has given me such a bedrock of understanding for others and understanding. And as far as the mental health journey of your people, you have to understand, and I said this to you earlier, that not everybody is mentally ill all the time. I mean, it could be situational.
Yes.
It could be episodic. It could be due to a real illness that they become quote unquote mentally ill or mentally unstable, or just needing some mental health support. And so I think, like you said, recognizing it at the top and being vulnerable and being not perfect and understanding that people aren't perfect and there's no perfect stories that, just go through your whole life. And as you said, it's such a big deal. I saw on your website something just like jumped out at me. It said it costs business $12 billion a year.
Yeah. And that's where people don't recognize, because it's so silent in that the impact that this has, it's more or less when you put the data to it. And NAMI they did a phenomenal workplace, mental health in the workplace survey in January 2024. And all this data is rolling out and such. And it's just, and you can do a real deep dive and get lost. However, it's just finally putting the data and connecting it to the economy and to workforce development, and to recognize that. And I think that is where, as CEOs and entrepreneurs, to really think, this is something additional to think about. However, it's the holistic approach. And is that the mission and vision of your company? Are you looking at things holistically? Because and I talked to you and others at the other night, was talking about the workforce and the workforce that we're hiring from, or the top of the funnel of those that are in college, the brand new recruits, those that are just graduating and such. Me having worked for the last 30 years, I know who are graduating right now or in the next couple of years and what they are expecting of companies, of that well-being, of mental health. That generation right now are very comfortable talking about mental health. And then when you look at who within your company are the hiring authorities,
Yeah,
is there disparate?
There's a big divide there, right?
Yeah, right.
And I like to think that I'm a little bit more in tune than others, perhaps
Yeah.
because I have my own journey.
Yes.
But like you said, the people who are coming out of college now have been through a once in a century
Yeah. Yeah.
that affected everybody. The
Right.
pandemic was so, like we are still not seeing the full implications
No.
of people having to stay home, the
Right.
gaps in education, the gaps in socializing, the gaps that happened out there. I mean, maybe one of the good things is more kids came out of poverty during the pandemic because there was extra monies that was pumped into the system. But still, it's and you're right. The kids are much more comfortable talking about their feelings, their pronouns, the things
Right.
that
Yeah.
they want to see,
Everything.
the representation, and yes, you're seeing my generation or our generation. I don't know how old
Yeah.
you are, but
Ours. Yes. Yeah.
our generation
Yeah.
and older, the boomers.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
1 year away from a boomer.
Right.
The boomers pushing back so hard. They don't want to accept this. When people argue with me about pronouns, I'm like, you used to say groovy and cool, and your parents didn't like that.
Just roll with it. All right. Exactly.
Right, roll with it. It's their new speak. Relax.
Bingo. Yes.
But it's bigger than that, right? Like you said, mental health is that we could look at technology, the way technology is going to work in the future, whether it's going to further isolate people.
Yep. It is, and that is absolutely the case as to how are we as a company, as executives ready for this? How are we educating ourselves to be ready for that? And that's what I'm thrilled to be able to. My hope is to work with companies about that, because I have both of those lived experiences of my own working with university students and understanding where that segment is, and also at the same time working with the parents of those students and kind of understanding what that transition is and going into it. And then as we hire them, what is that really going to look like? And let's add the mental health component all to that, because that's the holistic approach that and this is how I even talk to faculty as well, is that with the COVID and the COVID generation, I have always shared that, it's not the students need to meet us where we are at. It's not the employees that we're hiring need to meet us where they're at. We need to learn where they're coming from. And the other piece is that with COVID and the entering workforce population is that a lot of us older have said, let's just suck it up, and we're almost back to normal. We're almost back to normal. Well, this generation, by their own lived experience of 18, 19, 25, 26, they really don't know what normal is, because they're still growing and maturing. So they have nothing to refer back to. Us older generation, and that's why I refuse to say back to, or this is the new normal. I was just like, according to who? So these are the additional perspectives, and I want to always add then the layer from a mental health standpoint, because that maturation, that development, brains do not develop. You have as we were talking the other night, is that you might have a body that's developed, but the brain is not. And so how, as we as entrepreneurs, as leaders, help coach that? Because you have the opportunity in your hands as far as that onboarding and the whole training program and the professional development leadership track. This is an additional layer to consider. Like, how do we, from a mental health, well-being, professional development, help you grow as an employee and on that leadership track?
Yeah, I agree. And talk about retention, right?
Hmm.
If you help someone, grow as their own confidence, their own mental health, their own, you're talking about being able to keep an employee and help them grow into perhaps executives or managers that you want them. How many times do we hear these stories of these managers or these, executives that got out of control and the CEOs didn't know that there was this
Yep.
whole toxic, um, you know, uh, environment in their own company.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
think is just teaching people that they have the ability to come forward and
Yeah.
share their
Yeah.
stories.
Yes. And that's exactly, and how do they do that? It's by the leadership creating a safe environment.
Hmm.
And that's talking about your own story. Again, even for me, my own mental health journey and severe anxiety and depression that I never even knew about until I was finally at a burnout phase that I found an incredible executive mental health professional program that I took a leave for 30 days
Hmm.
to get, and who was with me in the group therapy? CEOs, physicians,
Hmm.
lawyers, bank. It was there were CIA agents. I was amazed as to looking around. I'm like, wow. So I'm not the only one. And it was the same story. And it's just it's very lonely, have no one else, and you're just going, 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 going. And at some point in time, when people say, well, burn the candles at both ends and so forth, and what happens? And your own whole identity and mesh with everything that you do. And there's different ways of managing it. And that's kind of how that all of walking the talk of experiencing. I'm like, wow, I have a lot of unpacking to do for my entire life as far as what I want to do. And that's kind of how to recognize that. And then what? You have the what and so what and now what type of cycle. And
Right.
that's kind of where, for me, taking this and taking my experience into the what and the so what, now what is how can I advocate? How can I talk more and having that experience? Because there's not a lot of execs that are saying it, are putting it out there because of fear. It is fear, but we know that there's now more strength behind talking about mental health than it is weakness. And I give a lot of credit to the professional athletes, especially with the Olympics, but more and more are slowly seeing that. And I think now's the time. This is the appropriate wave to ride as after COVID to be able to say, I needed to figure out what was going on, and I have managed that, and I continue that healing journey. However, let's embrace this, and
Yeah,
then it
I mean,
gives
Simone
permission.
Biles was just
Bingo.
a great,
Yeah.
story. And my wife grew up as a competing gymnast, and she talked about being a young athlete, 13 years old, being sent away, actually choosing to go away from home. She wouldn't let
Right.
her parents
Right.
not, and that whole. She was in that whole scene of gymnasts, which is, obviously, really bad things happened.
Right.
One thing that I want to bring up, with my own mental health journey, is, a lot of people think you were talking about strength and weaknesses,
Hmm.
and coming forward. First of all, it is a strength to seek out help, right?
Right.
So, and
Exactly.
there is no such thing with mental health and depression and anxiety, who I also had anxiety attacks as a kid, didn't know what they were,
Right.
checked
Yeah.
myself into the emergency room a couple of times, and
Yeah.
finally
Amazing.
had a
Yeah.
smart doctor come over and say, you're not dying of a heart attack.
Right.
You
But
need
still,
help.
you need that
Right.
reassurance.
And it's an incredible journey to go through. And so two things. Number one, it's you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's just
Right.
it's a fallacy.
Yep.
It doesn't work. Even I think the military has come around to
Yes.
understand mental health and
Yeah.
PTSD and
Hmm.
understanding what it takes to make people whole who go through traumatic things. And then the other thing I think is important to uh, note about a mental health journey is it's not often just one thing. It's
Yeah,
not,
that's right.
it's not the, like I think I was with my therapist for a couple of years, maybe a year and a half, right? And I don't remember the aha moment going, that's it,
Right.
cured.
Right.
It's a
Right. No.
journey. It's like
Yes.
it's like a
Yes.
little bit of pulling the fibers back together, and it's a bunch of different threads that are intertwined into a strong rope to pull yourself out,
Right, right. It's a lot of work, and this is kind of where when I started with that 4-week program, and then I'm still in therapy every other week and such, but it's them asking you so many different questions, and it's the journaling and a variety of certain things, and in part you're like, I just don't want to do this, but then realizing as you're doing that, they have the unbiased lens to help pull out and extract, and then, as you said, start weaving this. They're like, do you see what happened? What's going on here? What's going on here? Look at the theme. What do these themes tell you, Andy? What?
Right.
And so it's a lot of work, but you're just that much better for it. And that's it goes into the whole emotional intelligence, self-actualization, that as a leader, these are amazing skills that we want to have everybody to have. And this is only further increasing your awareness and your abilities. So you're understanding yourself. You're then understanding how it is for others too, and your team. So you have that lived experience to relate to be able to help you even be a better leader.
So I would implore leaders, of course, that have been through their own mental health issues to kind of come forward and be a living example of, hey, you can get better, quote unquote, and get help. Mm-hmm. But, how about a message to the people who have never experienced it and might be a leader? Mm-hmm. And how do they implement something in their company and be more empathetic to when they just don't understand?
Right. And, I just did a presentation yesterday to a variety of executives coming from different countries, and was just really talking about, what is there a stigma? Do you think there's a stigma or not in the workplace? And if there is a no, we don't have a stigma, how do you know that? How are you even going to answer? I think that's the first question of having that really, coming, lack of better words, coming to Jesus type of a talk as to, what does that look like? And this is where I am so pleased to be able to say, hey, let me come on in. Let me just talk. Let's have an unbiased, but someone that gets it and in a safe environment. And then we can start figuring that out to start peeling it away, because just even asking the question is progress. Not asking the question, I mean, shame, right? That's what I have to say. It's just that because of where we are and where mental health is and the whole vernacular and the conversation in society at this time, now's the time that you actually have permission to ask that question of yourself, of your C-suite, of your team, because that will be welcomed. It will absolutely be welcomed. They're not saying you should be talking about it. They're waiting for it.
Yeah. And
it's a risk.
After running a company for 30 years, after being part of some other organizations, eventually you'll run into someone that does something drastic, like either tries or does take their own life.
Yeah.
And that's usually a wake-up call to an organization, right, to say, please, if anybody is having issues, we're here. And you've seen that in,
yes,
like some of the sports things, some of the sports teams come out and say, we're here for you, and we're willing to give you help. And, like you said, that's, I just watching that video of John Bon Jovi talking that woman off of the side of a bridge.
Yeah.
And, and obviously it took to get her off that bridge and perhaps pursue, hopefully, her mental health.
Right.
Was somebody who was caring enough. And it might not have even been John. It was the person who's standing next to John.
Well, it's a comment. Right, well, that was a good team and such.
I'm sure it was pretty cool. It's like, hey, I'm John Bon Jovi.
Well, that's a reality check right there, to be like, holy cow, he's giving me space for all of that. I want to say also, I do this training, suicide prevention training as well. It's me coming on in. It's not one of our team. It's me, because I think it's really important. Where I'm going with that is exactly where you were, is that how can we talk about prevention as opposed to response?
Mm.
And
Yeah,
and
sure.
that's really, really, I in my former role in university, I did too many responding. And as far as into the crisis response, it's more or less, how do we as leaders, and you said it wonderfully, as to what can we do now? That's exactly the approach we need to take.
Yeah.
And because the other part is, as a leader, when you do have that crisis, or you know of an employee whose family member did something or something happened, that there's a ripple effect in that department, in the company, that needs to be acknowledged, because it's that employee, their family, but also coworkers, and it's all intertwined, and the intersectionality is so important. And that's kind of where a lot of people just figure, oh gosh, our condolences, but I'm like, there's a lot more that needs to happen besides that. That's what we want to be able to help with too.
I mean, be firsthand, obviously being involved in the Jean Cleary
Yeah.
case
Yes.
as a young man, and just watching the ripple effect, not only of her family, but of her friends, of the university systems. And now, it's turned into something much bigger, that her mom,
Tremendous.
brought in the Cleary Act. And if, you didn't catch it, but they passed the Stop Hazing Act.
Yes. Oh yeah. No, all over it. Yep.
And it was unanimously passed in the House.
Yes.
And then the other nice thing is they did a big kudos to the Cleary Center and to Mrs. Cleary for that. And
as they should.
And they should. And so to that point, so number one is kind of coming out to your staff and saying, hey, we recognize that there's this second half of your health insurance that, it's not just physical health, it's mental health. And we recognize that as a company, and we value that as a company. And then I think number two is showing people that there are resources out there.
Yes. And, that's something too within Broward County and across the state and such, and across the country, because you all are all over the place, of understanding what those resources are. Because this is kind of that, you don't know what you don't know.
Sure.
And care management teams and a variety of sorts. And that's kind of where, for me at the time, that I just needed to figure out, okay, who can I reach out to be able to find out for my own self and such. And thank goodness I knew kind of quickly how to navigate a couple of different things. But I was in the space, and so, but it's others like, who do I even go to? Who do I call? Who can I? And that is so important, because there are resources that are ready, willing, and able in a heartbeat to be able to be responsive. And so that's kind of where we go about the approach of the adage of teach a person how to fish. So let's show what those resources are, because more often than not, human behavior is, I'm only going to tap those resources when I'm in crisis. So how can we, even through trainings and a variety of sorts, of helping each other know that information? Because who knows that if you have a friend who's in crisis, you can help them, point them in the right direction. And that's the other piece of helping each other for that. So be it supervisors, partners, community members, pickleball club members, all of that, to be able to know, hey, let me help guide you. Because that is when, in the moment's notice, when you have a really close friend, that there is no question about, and I got you.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you just have to ask the question. And I've learned that, my wife happens to have her master's in counseling. There's a rumor going around my family that they've hired her 35 years ago to take care of me. And they're still paying her.
Very good investment.
Yeah, they're like, hey, we need someone to take care of this kid.
Right, so please. Sign here.
But seriously, I've learned from her, because she walks in a room and she engages with people.
Oh yeah.
And
yes.
I can see from across the room, they're immediately, in tears, because she asked them that heartfelt question, how are you? And
right.
She means it.
Bingo.
And then, when they start telling stories, she just keeps asking questions. And,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times people will, they're just looking for something to say. So I think,
Yes.
part of the takeaway from today is
Mm-hmm.
number one, we need to all be better at asking how everybody's doing and giving them, and number two is being able to connect them with the right resources. Because one thing I've always figured out that I'm not a good mental health counselor.
Yeah. And that's good to recognize what your strengths are, but then
Right.
also know where to refer and such.
But there are
Yes.
professionals. It's,
Yes.
again, I'm not going to, I realize that I shouldn't just hand someone a book and say, read this, you'll be fine. That
No,
doesn't work.
right. No. It's taking the time. First of all, creating that space, giving permission. I care about you, and it's just not the words, as you said. That even with your wife and others, and some of us just have a really good style to be able to say, please, I want to hear, and I want to be able to help, and how. Let's talk about this a little bit more. And when you create that safe space, then people are willing to open up more. And because they say a lot of times they just haven't had a chance to talk to anybody.
Agreed. So to wrap it up, is there any parting words you want to leave to perhaps people listening that,
Yeah. And I again appreciate this time too, Andy. And it's more or less that if for those that are just thinking about, well, maybe I should talk to somebody, then do it. It is something to take absolute advantage of. There is no risk. It is all safe. And you'll be that much better after the fact too. Because if you are, doing that annual checkup, if you're going to the dentist to get that cleaning, well, there's more cleaning that needs to get done. And that is in the mental health space.
It's great words. And I felt that as soon as I met you, that you have the unique ability, like a lot of people, like my wife, like, lots of mental health professionals out there that can create that safe space for you, that can help heal you. I want to tell everybody out there that, if you have a mental illness, again, there is help.
Yeah, there is. Absolutely.
Great stuff out there.
All right, great. Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what's
so our website for NAMI Broward is just NAMI Broward, oneword.org. And then I'll also, as far as even me coming on in and such, you can contact me. Instagram is really easy. At Dr. Joe O is really easy. At Dr. Joe O, and you can kind of find out me even more as far as LinkedIn and my own website and such to be able to do, because that's where I found my mission is I want to be able to share the story, be authentic about especially the executive mental health, so we can share that space and create a really good movement going forward.
Well, I look forward to doing this again someday.
Yes.
And giving you places to speak. So I think that's important. And
thank you.
Look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for the opportunity. All right. You take care, and happy birthday to someone soon, right?
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
All right. Thank you, Eddie.
Hey, Jessica, you know what time it is?
Money time?
Almost. It's time for listing of the week.
Hi, everybody. John Fullerton with Trans World Business Advisors here in Omaha, Nebraska. And we've got a great new deal on the market, just came out. Manufacturing, a lot of people like that. It's really popular. You're really going to like this one, especially too. They're only asking $750,000 for this business. And they made about $250,000 pretty consistently, seller's discretionary earnings. So it's priced just right. We've had several lenders that look at this, and they all have come up with a good appraisal. We have it priced right to sell. It's going to go quickly. So act now. But it's manufacturing these custom components for home improvements. And they've been around since 2000. Well-established company, lots of trained, tenured employees, good quality in place, owner semi-absentee, and also the building is available for $1,050,000. Also priced right and a great deal, so you can build equity in that building as well. We've gotten SBA pre-approval for that, including the building as well. So last year, total sales more than 1.3 million, almost 1.4. And as I mentioned, almost $250,000 in seller's discretionary earnings. A great business that you'll want to act fast on, and come and see me about it. Come visit us. We can do a virtual meeting if you're interested as well, if you're not from out of town. Fantastic opportunity for you. My phone number is 402-213-9945. My email address is jfullerton, JFULLERTON @tworld.com. Check it out.
Hey, Andy, do you know what time it is? It's time for our deal of the week.
Deal of the week.
Sold.
Hey, everybody. It's Mike Shea in the Tampa office. I want to talk about this week's deal of the week. We had the great pleasure of handling a vacation rental company, and being in the Disney market, we've done literally hundreds of these. So the seller was someone that I have known personally for about 20 years. We've been part of networking groups in the trade association. We have common CPAs and insurance people that we've worked with on deals in the past, and he's a real estate broker. But he reached out to me and said, Mike, hey, I want to retire. I want to sell this thing, which was nice. So he was a deal maker in the real estate space, but had been doing property management and could have done the deal himself, frankly, but he knew that I had done so many that it was probably best to give it to me. So he called me up and said, hey, I'd like to be out of this before season. So season starts November. He wanted to get this done and dusted before and train the new owner before Christmas started. So came to me. It was a $950,000 transaction with a $300,350 cash flow. Within 24 hours, we had 14 offers, and the buyer was a young man who'd been trying to buy a business for me in the property management space for the better part of a year. He was a former finance professional, colleague of my wife's, oddly enough. I called him up. I said, I found the one. He said, what do I need to do? I said, write the offer. By the way, all 14 offers were full price offers. Deal went off without a hitch, 60 days from start to finish. It was a great deal for great people. If you have a property management business or anything in the real estate space, long-term, short-term, nobody sold more of these than Transworld. I can be reached at mike@tworld.com or 321-287-0349. Have a good one.
Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends on social media. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcasting app. If you have questions, would like to appear, or have suggestions for topics for the show, get in contact with us through our website, thedealboardpodcast.com.